So in section 9.9, we're going to begin our first of 3 deep dives into studies that had neutral findings. This first one by Schiedler et al. In 2013 found that palm cooling does not improve running performance. Their objective was to test a commercial palm cooling product's efficacy during endurance running in the heat. So the methods they had was 12 trained runners, treadmill runs to exhaustion at 75% VO2 max in a warm environment. So this is good. They were in a warm environment, 30 degrees Celsius, running to exhaustion. So this is presenting significant thermal strain, which is fantastic. High heat, high intensity, high duration environment. In one trial, they held the BEX Runner palm cooling device. This is a handheld unit with a cooled gel pack. I believe it is no longer in existence. I don't think it exists. I've looked it up. I have not been able to find it, but this is what they used at the time. In the other trial, they had no device, so control. They had an ingestible pill, measured core temperature, time to exhaustion, and RPE. The key findings they had is that using the palm cooler did not improve any performance, and in fact, it may have actually reduced performance. They found that time to exhaustion was actually 5 minutes shorter with the device, 41 minutes versus 46 minutes, although total exercise time, including warm-up, was similar. They concluded that the device, quote, did not eliminate or even attenuate core temperature increase, and both trials showed similar thermal and perceptual strain. So this is where they came to the conclusion that palm cooling does not improve running performance. And their final authors' conclusions were that handheld gel-based palm cooling device failed to enhance endurance, and in fact, holding it provided no cooling benefit to core temperature, calling into question its usefulness for runners. So very valid conclusions from their study. So let's take a critical review at the study design. First of all, the palm cooling device, as listed in the article, was a 10 millimeter by 6 millimeter gel bladder. So that is small, a very small gel bladder. And they said, quote, with a gross overestimate of maximal heat storage capacity of 62.46 kilojoules. We're going to come back and do some math on that shortly. Now, subjects ran until core temperature reached 37.5 Celsius, and then ran at 75%, so that was a warm-up, and then ran at 75% of VO2 max in 30-degree heat, 50% humidity conditions until exhaustion. So it's a great environment for heat stress, high heat stress. This can be considered significant effort. We're talking 75% VO2 max running in the heat. So this is just a perfect scenario for heat stress. But let's do some calculations. So this is probably considered high-intensity metabolic heat production, but let's conservatively say it was moderate metabolic heat production, which is typically around 500 watts. Maximum intensity frequency often can exceed 1,000 watts, even going up to 1,500. So let's just assume it's a little bit more than moderate. It was, on the low end of intense exercise, 75%. So let's safely assume 700 watts of metabolic heat production. That's 75% VO2 max in hot conditions. So 700 watts metabolic heat production. The device had a finite capacity of 62.46 kilojoules of cooling. Divided by 70 watts, that is 89 seconds worth of heat capacity. So 89 seconds worth of metabolic heat production. That's all it was able to attenuate. Now, these subjects, based on the amount of time they ran, the average time to exhaustion was 50 minutes, the maximum heat capacity it could have done was equivalent to 1.5 minutes of work. That's the equivalent to 3%. So the device's capacity was equivalent to only 3% of potential heat. And that's just factoring for metabolic heat demands. That has nothing to do with the actual environment or the severely impaired abilities for the body to naturally cool itself. So mathematically speaking, the heat transfer capability for this specific device was not even remotely close to being sufficient to generate a positive performance effect. So the conclusion is that this study that says palm cooling is not effective for runners was really a failure of implementation. It wasn't a failure of palm cooling or the physiology. The gel pack was far too small. It was a closed system with a finite heat capacity. It was provided to participants directly out of the freezer, which means there's a very good chance that the initial reaction was vasoconstriction, and it didn't even work that well until it heated up. So takeaways, this study shows that insufficient cooling is ineffective. It does not disprove the efficacy of palm cooling, but rather it reaffirms to us that design and implementation matter. So this was a really, really good study to take a deep look at.